some update stuff, nothing, you don't need.
I'd like to
it's not
call
urgent.
this interim
Just when you
meeting
get a
of the
chance.
Board of Education to order. It is Tuesday, July 16th, 2019. I apologize for getting, for the delay in the start. It is about 4:05.
5:04.
5:04, sorry. 5:04. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Discussion real quick. I think, do we need to move item 4 in front of item 3?
I don't believe so.
So there
Item
is no
3
more
is
discussion on item 3?
unless, is that a motion?
Would we not find out things in the closed session that might help us in our decision-making?
If that is the will of the board, we can certainly do that.
I make a motion to move item 4 in front of item 3.
I'll second that motion.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda as amended is approved. Moving on to item 2, information policies for first reading. Mr. Nichols.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. These policies, the 3 policies, I'm going to ask you to consider waiving first reading so that we can get them in place for the schools before school starts. So the first policy is the grading system, 7410, and I'll ask Dr. Smith if she will share the changes.
Yes, thank you. The State Board of Education allows for districts to provide students with the opportunity to retake a course for credit. And we have, in the past, we've allowed children to retake courses for credit if they have failed a course. This policy will now allow those students to retake a course for credit if they have passed that course, but they want to try to achieve a higher grade. We allowed the district to study this for a year because we wanted to better understand the need for this and how often it would be used. And what we found is most often is for those students who are very much vested in a specific area, and they want to make sure that they've got a good solid foundation before they move on to a higher level course. And then also students who might experience some type of traumatic event in their life. So they have a strong academic record and something occurs in their life, and we don't want them to have to carry the negative repercussions of a lower grade than they might normally have earned in a course if not for that traumatic event. So this just provides language to that existing policy that would include that more formally for students in our district.
Do we have any questions at all for the committee? Okay, thank you. The next policy that Mr. Rivenbark and I ask you to consider is the, what do you have next? The dress code, policy 9022. And I'm going to ask Mr. Bollier if he will share his thoughts about this policy.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. The reason I brought this to the board's attention was because I felt like times have changed. It's time for our dress code to align with those new realities. The idea that our young ladies in New Hanover County Public Schools have to be hot because of how their young men might view them, I think is an idea that's past its time. I feel like this dress code change brings us into alignment with the reality of women's fashions. It's acceptable, it's moderate, it's appropriate, and I would just like the board to consider it.
And if any questions or comments from any member?
Did you receive any input from school administrators that have to enforce this dress code when you were when you were considering this, or do you have anything like that you could bring to us?
We did get some feedback, but Al O'Brien came and he shared with us the steps that the principals normally have to take and how much time and time out of class, and that he felt that the principals would appreciate this. And certainly we hold the students and their families accountable for how they want to dress their children and send them to school in a professional manner.
Okay.
I would also note that this does not apply to elementary school principals or elementary schools, as they still have the liberty within their school to decide how the dress code will be enforced.
And some of our elementary schools do have certain colors that they encourage the families to buy, and so they all look like to represent their school in the colors and the citizenship and whatever that they're trying to encourage in that school. But high school is quite a challenge for our principals and teachers, so we hope they'll appreciate the change.
Well, did you hear from teachers or parents about this, so that you talked to the principals, or one principal, but did you talk, I'm just trying to get information, because I know what it was like when I was doing that, when I was working as an administrator, and also as a teacher, and also as a parent. So I was just wondering if you got any feedback besides the one person as far as making decisions. And I'm sure Mr. Boulder, too, has a father and 2 children, daughters, and that makes sense, too.
Yeah, and I hear what Ms. Justice is saying. I don't, for this specific policy, I think it's important that we actually hear from parents and from teachers and principals instead of waiving first reading.
We can do that.
I think that, you know, if we're gonna ask to do the policy, like something like this, I think that we should at least give parents and teachers and principals the opportunity to know that we're gonna do the policy. And
You want them to tell us what to do?
no, I'd like to hear from them though. I think it's important to hear from parents every once in a while.
Well, we did get quite a bit of feedback that Mrs. Adams sent out. I don't know if the full board got copies of it, but we had quite a bit of comments, and some were from the same people over and over, but they were asking for more leniency than constrictions.
All this policy does is get rid of leggings and removes the length requirement for dresses, skirts, skirts, and similar garments, as well as allows for spaghetti straps and tank tops. The restrictions, all the other restrictions remain in place in terms of clothing, jewelry, gang-related stuff, all the stuff that was there before. But leggings in 2019, 2020, length requirements, you can't meet those standards and shop at any of the stores that our young ladies frequent.
Right, and I understand that's your opinion, but I think that it would be important if we're gonna pass something like this to at least give the public the opportunity to comment on them. We have another board meeting coming up in the beginning of August, so that would give us at least, instead of waiving first reading, we could vote on that August. It'll give the public 2 weeks to.
Right, and if there's some way to do a public notice so they could give us feedback, maybe on our website or something, because I understand probably that you got some feedback, but I didn't see it really out in the public to the point where it was probably the people that were more concerned, and they don't necessarily, I'm just saying, they don't necessarily, I don't know, represent the whole population.
But the policies, before they come to the committee, are out there on the website for anyone who wants to give feedback to that committee, or to the board, or to the superintendent. We like when they give it to the superintendent, because
What I don't understand is, what are we doing here? If we're gonna allow the parents to tell us what we should do.
well, I don't think the parents would object to
I think we should
this.
set the standard,
Well,
and I think Nelson's done a pretty good job of that.
Well, I think with all due respect, I think one of the reasons why we are on here is so that we can listen to the parents. And then when we do listen to the parents, then we can make it, I mean, I understand we make the decision, but we don't make the decision in just a unilateral voice. I think it's the voice of the parents and the principals and the teachers that we listen to, and then we
Well,
make the
the only
decision.
thing we've taken out is spaghetti strap tops, tank tops, and took out blouses must not completely, but cover undergarments. I don't think that's anything asking.
There is a national movement to look at dress code. We are not the only ones having this conversation. There was a story that just came out recently, Roanoke, Virginia. they did send out they made their changes and their suggestions, and then it was sent out to the parents and teachers and principals to find out what their thoughts were on that. I think this is a real great step in the right direction to more of a gender-neutral dress code, but I do agree that I think it is something that we should just let people weigh in on.
Well, you've got timing on
Doesn't
your
affect-
side,
yeah,
but
doesn't
doing it at an interim meeting,
Okay.
you can make this your first reading and still have
August.
at your August meeting, which will be prior to the start of traditional school.
So how about we put a link on the front page of the website that specifically links this policy so that it is easier to find and easier to comment on? Anita, can we do that? Okay.
And ask for feedback and time for us to be able to present it back to the board at the August meeting. So the committee will come together, we'll get a time frame, and we'll come together before the meeting, and so we'll have it ready in August.
Thank you.
So we'll hold this one and we'll do the third policy, and then we'll go back and vote, and, okay, thank you for that. Okay, the last policy today is the, for volunteers with the, what's the title of it? The school volunteers. So, Mrs. Eastep had a suggestion, and we have a policy for you to consider.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Nichols. Many of our board members participate in our schools as volunteers, and it just didn't seem to make sense that we were excluded from the school volunteer policy of background checks. So I thought that we should, in fact, have those background checks, so that would bind not only, the current board, but future boards to that standard, because we do serve as volunteers. And of course, we want to make sure that we are held to the same standard as everybody else in the schools.
And
That's really the only change.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Goldberg, would you explain who of the volunteers would have to have the background check?
The superintendent has established a two-tiered system where you have a level 1 volunteer and a level 2 volunteer. Level 1 volunteers are volunteers who come into the schools but do not, they're never left alone with students. They're always in group settings, and like parents come in and read to the class, for example. Well, the superintendent does not require those individuals to undergo criminal background checks. For the level 2 volunteers, those are volunteers who come in and actually sit down with students and have one-on-one or small group interaction with students, and may be in situations where they're not supervised as closely by staff. And in that situation, the superintendent does require a criminal background check for them.
And so we would not know whether we were going to have the opportunity to be one-on-one with a student or not. So I think it's a wise recommendation.
And I believe that Tier 2 also allows you to attend field trips,
Yeah.
right? So, did you say that? Did I miss that? I'm sorry if I did.
So if we'll go back to policy,
Just to be clear, the board member, based on what we do, it would be, the board would need to have criminal background checks, correct?
yes, yes.
Okay, and it also shows that the volunteers may be required to pay for the service. I mean, I would say that board members should, obviously pay for their own criminal background checks, so.
And we talked about the prices, around $20.
$20 is fine.
Yeah, that should not be an issue for us. So, for policy 7410, the grading system, and the policy 9022, school volunteers, I ask that we waive first reading, and so we need a motion for that, please.
Move to waive first reading for policies 7410 and 9022.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They are approved.
And we waive now, do we vote on the policies, don't we?
Okay, I'm sorry, so we have waived first reading. Now we are, asked for a motion to approve policy 7410 grading systems and policy 9022 school volunteers as presented.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols.
And thank you for the input from the board members.
All right, I would now like to go, ask for a motion to go into closed session.
Yeah. You've got to do a first reading on the dress code policy.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, it's,
Pardon?
That's just an information
vote,
item.
that's
You
for
don't vote to
information.
it for first reading.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
but the minutes will show that we're gonna send it back to committee.
Okay. All right, so now I would like a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143, 318, 11A, 136, and 115C-319 and 321.
move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in closed session. I call this meeting back to order. Moving on to item number 3, old business. Brooks Pierce McClendon, Humphrey and Leonard LLP, contract up for consideration. Is there a motion to approve the contract as written?
I move that the contract be approved as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's great.
Any discussion?
Yes, I would like an addendum added to the contract concerning the, Joe Wilson not have contact with the local Pearson Brooks firm, law firm, while she's doing her investigation.
Is that an official motion?
I'm just telling why I do not.
Is that an official motion?
Well, I can do that. Yeah, I'd like to motion that.
Is there a second to that motion?
Well, she's already promised us that she's not gonna have any contact with the law firm in Wilmington, so I don't see any need to do that.
So there is no second to that motion? So the motion, that
Yeah,
amendment to
for
the
lack of a
motion
second.
fails? Okay. So going back to, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion
Opposed?
has been, okay, the motion has been approved 6-1. All right. Moving on to item number 5, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
It sure is.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned.